What's up, everybody? My name is Dimitri Kofinas, and you're listening to Hidden Forces, a podcast that inspires investors, entrepreneurs, and everyday citizens to challenge consensus narratives and to learn how to think critically about the systems of power shaping our world. My guest in this week's episode is a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, in fact, who recently launched a newsletter, anonymously, mind you, and in the last 6 months since its launch, he and his team have added over 16,000 email subscribers, averaging 40,000 views per piece. And his Twitter account, which they also launched in May of this year, has more followers than I do. And I've had my account for over 10 years. So you can imagine just how successful they've been in building a brand and in cultivating an audience, a skill set that is very important in today's decentralized, networked economy. And we spend the entire first hour of today's conversation discussing what that process has been like, what goes into building a brand from scratch, and the opportunities that have emerged for independent voices, who they benefit, and how to capitalize on them. In the second hour, we transition into a conversation about cancel culture and the power of the platforms versus the power of the audience, and what it means to have a dedicated group of followers who value you and what you do and are willing to go to bat for you in the event that you end up in the crosshairs of the censors or some righteous mob of activists. Doomberg and I also discuss some of the topics of his newsletter, which you can find at doomberg.substack.com, including America's and Europe's energy policies, why he thinks they don't work, and what it would take to fix them, as well as a more macro-oriented conversation about inflation and the influence of the economy on asset markets versus the influence of monetary policy, and which one is really in the driver's seat. As usual, the second hour is available to subscribers only, which you can access at hiddenforces.io/subscribe or directly through Patreon at patreon.com/hiddenforces. There's no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and the entire library of Hidden Forces subscriber content going all the way back to episode 1 becomes instantly available to you, including the overtimes, transcripts, and rundowns to this episode and every other episode we've ever done. So without any further ado, please enjoy this week's episode with my friend Doomberg, the little green chicken with his very own Bloomberg terminal. Doomberg, the chicken. Welcome to Hidden Forces.
Dimitri, so fantastic to be on your show.
It's so weird having you on.
Yes, we should disclose that we're good friends and we've known each other for many years, and I've admired your work for a long time. I've probably listened to almost as many Hidden Forces episodes as you have, if we counted it up.
Especially lately, maybe, because I stopped listening to myself because I gotten so tired of it. So it's great having you on, man. Yes, we've been friends for quite a long time. And one of our mutual friends, Grant Williams, also had you on his podcast. Beat me to the punch. It's a phenomenal podcast. And if I remember correctly, because I heard it when it first came out, I didn't hear it ahead of this recording, that you and I it was a long time coming that you and I were going to do this. But I could recall that you guys spent a good amount of time going over your background in that episode, right?
Yes.
So although I recommend for everybody to subscribe to Grant Williams' podcast, it's awesome. And you and I might have a chance to talk about his most recent episode, which dropped today, which is a video for his gold tier, a video conversation that he had with John Perkins, the economic hitman. All that said, I would love if you could actually give my audience a sense of your background as well, because you are a super accomplished, super smart guy, and you're anonymous. And we'll get into why that is. But since we don't know who you are, or people don't know who you are, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about who you are so people can understand the context of some of the later conversations we're going to have.
Happy to, Dimitri. And again, really grateful to be on your show. So Doomberg is actually a team, a small team. We run, in our real lives, we run a bespoke sort of consulting business that you can think of as a think tank. Our clients ask us to understand complex topics quickly and give them interesting and unique ways to view those problems. We really love that work. And as part of sort of that team, we have a pretty diverse mix of backgrounds. My personal background is I'm a trained scientist and lots of experience in heavy industry. Combined, our team has several decades in what you would sort of consider traditional heavy industry commodity environmental policy, renewable energy in that space. And one of the unique attributes of our firm is our ability to distill that complexity into crisp and clean written communications and visuals for our clients. And so, as we explained on the Grant Williams show, when COVID came and that disrupted our business substantially, we sort of had to reinvent ourselves in the way that many small business owners had to. It was extraordinarily disruptive to our business. And one of the things that we noticed was the entire manner in which work was going to be performed was transforming radically. The stay-at-home, work from home, COVID-19 lockdowns caused people to totally reconsider how they think, how they work, and importantly, how they are entertained and how they are educated. And we call it the gig economy for brains, which is exploding. And so we look at content creators like you and Grant and several other friends that we know, and we decided that, hey, maybe we could create something unique in this space and participate in it. There, the old expression is those who can do, those who can't teach. Well, as a professional consultant, that's sort of a moniker that kind of rubs you the wrong way sometimes. And so in a sense, Doomberg was our effort to show that, in fact, we could do these things. And so we decided to launch Doomberg anonymously, as you said, and our intent is to remain anonymous. And the reason we did that is because, if you start out a content creation business with no sort of personal social media following, there's only so many ways you can stand out. And so we decided that the green chicken would be one of those ways. And so it's been phenomenally successful, far exceeding all of our expectations. It's quite amazing, actually, that that we're sitting here talking to you on the podcast. But it's been a really fun experiment. It's literally the work of our lives, and we hope to keep going with it.
So I don't think you actually said, though, why you have chosen to remain anonymous, especially given how difficult it is.
Yeah, it's actually not that difficult. It makes it easier in some ways. And it's just a brand attribute that is consistent with sort of the entirety of our efforts. And so we gave this a lot of thought before we started. The content creation business, as you know, more than anybody, is turning into a true profession. The decentralization of thought and entertainment is accelerating rapidly. And there's 100, 1,000 different Substacks or podcasts where the brand is the person behind it. And we decided to do something different and unique. And that's a key element of, we think it's at least partially a key element of the success we've been able to have, at least early on. It's in no small part because, hey, it's the green chicken, it's unique. We have a pretty strong marketing background in our firm. Several on our team have spent a lot of time in the marketing space. And there's a few expressions that we think about and care deeply about and remind ourselves of as we go about this little experiment. One of which is, from a branding perspective, you can't be remembered if you don't stand out. And so the barrier to entry into content creation is very, very low, but the barrier to entry to doing it and succeeding is a little bit higher and requires a bit more thought and a bit more professionalism. Like, you treat Hidden Forces and the Dimitri Kofinas brand with a lot of professionalism, which is why you've had so much success. For us, starting out with sort of no social media footprint whatsoever, we felt it would be more interesting, different, unique, and help us grow faster if we developed a brand around Doomberg, which is a great name. It's a much better name than my real name. I can assure you of that.
Yeah. So a few thoughts. First of all, in the point about anonymity, I think there's also something, I think it does, in some ways, it makes it more difficult. But also, I think there's really a market for it, because what we have today in media is a lot of people often make the story about themselves. They don't make it about the content. And I think one of the benefits of having an anonymous account is that you can maybe more easily focus on that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, have you found that to be the case for you?
Let me give you the
and
reverse analysis.
And there's also, it's more difficult to make personal attacks, because
Yes,
personal attacks are another
exactly.
thing that is so common today.
This is exactly our point. So if you are anonymous, one of the ways that the social media mobs work to cancel ideas is to attack the person. And if you're anonymous, the only thing that's left for people to attack are the ideas. And we're happy to defend the ideas we've written about. And that's not to say we have, anything in our lives that we're, ashamed of. We're not writing these things from jail. We have professional lives that we're happy with. But, this goes to the deeper question of the metaverse and where the world is going. And, our children live online. They live in a virtual world, and they create characters that they would like to be. all the time. And I think part of the decision to go and stay anonymous, and will always be anonymous, is in part a nod to perhaps our generation doesn't truly understand the change that's afoot in media and how people live and in the metaverse. And this is our experiment towards that end. In the world of our readers, we're the green chicken. Now, our friends know who we are, and our friends appreciate the experiment and are interested to learn what's worked and what hasn't worked and why we've gone about just the questions you're asking right now. But I do think the world is going towards decentralized brains, and it's a little bit liberating to write behind an anonymous character. And also it's quite liberating to know that we could start a new one from scratch, given the experience that we've had.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's one of the things that I'm excited to talk to you about later, which is how you built this brand, because Doomberg's Twitter page has more followers right now. You have over 20.6 thousand followers. You started this account less than a year ago in April 2021. My account has been live for more than 10 years, and I have 19.7 thousand followers. So I actually really want to just state how remarkable that is for listeners to understand that you've been able to grow this kind of a following. And I think it speaks to the brand, it speaks to your style, the focus on the content, and the fact that there's clearly an audience for the stuff that you write about. So let's actually go there first, which is what it is that you write about. What are the types of stories that you're interested in?
So at the core of our real business, and by the way, I keep saying that, but our intent with Doomberg is that this becomes our real business someday. And what a great pleasure that would be to only do what you love all day, writing for and interacting with your audience for a living. And that's where the gig economy for brains is going, we believe. The things we write about are things that interest us. And so one of the key skills at our firm is distilling complexity. It's understanding complex topics and being able to write about them in ways that teach others. And, if you can explain something to somebody, then you've truly understood it. And we've done that very, very well in our private lives. And we thought, hey, there's so much information flow. So, the world is changing, and the manner in which people are consuming information is changing. That comes with some positives, and it comes with some drawbacks. One of the positives is you have ready access to raw information in real time in ways that couldn't have been dreamt of 10 years ago. But one of the drawbacks is that the understanding of that information can be challenging for people if they don't have the background. And we have a pretty extensive background in a unique area that's of extreme relevance to the world today, which is energy policy, the energy transition, how the economy works from the bottom up. So we would consider ourselves sort of more corporate than Wall Street, and having a true understanding of how ideas get reduced to practice in the real world. That is sometimes lacking as people debate things online. And so the combination of fascinating interest in the things that are occurring in the world with our ability to explain it crisply, I believe it at least partially explains some of the good feedback that we've received from our pieces. We take pride in how clear our writing is. This goes to process. So if you're a content creator like you, every one of your podcast episodes, I know you. We interact in real life, and sometimes you let me hear things and ask for my opinion on them. I know that you, Dimitri, live and die by the quality of every episode, by every review that you get on Apple iTunes.
Don't tell people that.
By the number of subscribers. Well, no, look, this is the work of your life. You have an outstanding product. The brand attributes of Hidden Forces are intelligent discourse, deep research, authentic conversations, unafraid to speak truth to power. That's what people feel when their podcast app says there's a new episode of Hidden Force. That's what I feel. That's what the definition of a brand is. And so, we have a very systematic work process for each piece. What is the idea? What is the research? What are the key points? How's the editing? What charts are we going to use? What are the colors? What is the brand book? We're treating it professionally. And I think the audience appreciates that. But if we are unhappy with a piece, we don't publish it. We don't publish a regular cadence because we don't want to be tied to a deadline where just getting something out is our obligation. Sometimes we publish 3 pieces in a week, and sometimes we publish 1. And so these are sort of the things we're learning. And by the way, we're learning on the fly. If you looked at our original strategy for Doomberg when we started, it's played out pretty well, but we're not afraid to take input from our readers and to look at the analytics and to say this works and this doesn't work, and we should focus more on this and less on that. So we're treating this very professionally. We wrote about it in a piece of, last week. Every month we put out the Work of My Life pieces where we talk about our journey together. We've shared openly our analytics with our audience from the start, and both to share with our audience our journey, but also to help potential other content creators as they think about participating in this gig economy for brains.
Right. It's like an open source experiment, and it's been very interesting to watch you grow it. Like I said, the growth and the numbers, and you and I speak on a regular basis, so I've been following it, have been just astounding. I mean, incredibly impressive. So again, that's something I do want to talk about because I think there are really valuable lessons there. I'm curious just as a content creator, how you go about this process, because you have a much less rigid content production process than I do. I wouldn't even say schedule because you don't even have a schedule. You don't have scheduled calls. Your schedule is wide open.
Yes. So that's the secret sauce of Doomberg.
So are there things that you do, like, there are things that I do. I don't do these things as much anymore because I've gotten into this systematized schedule, which I'm actually breaking out of. Every now and then I fall into this trap. But more often than not, what I tend to do is I try to engage in certain types of activities that might inspire me. And from the inspiration comes something authentic, but I have to do something to inspire myself oftentimes to get there. Do you do anything similar, or are you at the stage still with this process where you're just so full of inspiration on a daily basis that when you sit down so often you write something?
So this is an important point and pretty unique, and I think perhaps the most difficult aspect of the Doomberg team for others to replicate because it's just so foreign to them. But in our business, we make it very clear to our clients and our friends that we don't take scheduled meetings. We are available 24/7 in the ways that people can be available today: Twitter, Slack, iMessage, and heaven forbid, phone calls. We like to talk to people. But we stand out in part with our clients because we insist that scheduled meetings be kept to an absolute minimum. And people actually love that. We've spent several decades working at companies of various size where your calendar is so full that to schedule a meeting takes 2 weeks or 3 weeks and requires the assistance of an executive assistant. That's a terrible way to live. And when we started our own firm, we had a firm rule that time is valuable, reading is valuable, thinking is valuable, that will create all our value in short bursts for our clients. So we don't bill on a per hour basis, we're retainer only. And you give us the problem and give us the time to think about it and leave our calendar free, and you'll be happy with the results. And we bet on ourselves in that way. And it's a spectacular way to live. Like, you sent me a text this morning, hey, what's your schedule like this week? And I took a screenshot and I said, oh, let me check. And it was blank. But that means I can record with you anytime you're ready because my schedule is clean. Now, because we do that, one of the things we had analyzed before we started our firm was just how much of our time was wasted in the old world and how many useless meetings and training courses and unnecessary travel. I was, flying 100 times a year. I think about all those wasted hours in airports, on flights, my knees crushed up against the seat in front of me, crying baby to the right of you, driving home late at night, not having seen your family for days or even weeks if you're going internationally. All of that's gone now. And so our entire lives literally are to consume complex information on the internet in real time, apply our pattern recognition skills, and try to connect dots in unique ways so that we can be a tool for our clients so that they can see different perspectives, sense changes in the economy or in the stock market a little quicker. Twitter is an amazing tool. And so our days literally are filled with reading, thinking, interacting. And then a key component of our business also is just we're consummate networkers. And the most powerful way to build a network is to give to your network. And we're firm believers that we just keep giving and meeting people and giving and meeting people. And then suddenly, when you do launch Doomberg, you're sitting on the Hidden Forces podcast with Dimitri Kofinas. It's really a fantastic way to live. It's quite inspiring. We wake up every day, and one of the mottos in the office is, today is pick your favorite day, Friday, December, whatever, and there's only ever going to be one of those. And our intent is to live today to the fullest. And we do that. And some clients really demand sort of regular meetings to feel as though they're getting the value, and we don't keep those clients. And so it's a really amazing way to live. It's part of our experiment.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point, because that speaks directly to people's level of confidence with what they're getting versus what they can measure.
Yes.
Like a lot of times people need to be able to say that they need to be able to point to something and say, I got something. I got this for what I put in, But what really doesn't matter how much time anyone spends. What matters is results. If you're getting the results, who cares if the person spent an hour or 100 hours? What you're willing to pay that person is what you're willing to pay them for the results that you want.
And ultimately, by living that life for years, which we've done, as you know, the inspiration for Doomberg is it never ends. It never feels like work. I personally love writing these pieces. They come to the team from all manner of suggestions. We crowdsource ideas, friends send stuff our way. And if it felt like work, we wouldn't be doing it. That's another rule. Like if a client feels like work, we simply don't accept that client. Or if we don't feel qualified to do a task, we're the first to say that's not for us. We're running a very robust and directed experiment under the belief that if we only do what we love all day, then that authenticity is irresistible to people.
So let me ask you this. This is what I want to kind of try to dig into deeper. And it wasn't something I planned to even kind of focus on when we started this conversation. And it goes back to my initial question about inspiration. So you've said a lot of things. Obviously, you're inspired by the ability to, you kind of suggested it, and I know you, to be able to spend more time with your family, spend more time doing the things that you love. But can we get deeper on what inspires you to do the kind of work that you do? So like spending as much time as you do going through the internet. What are you looking for example, when you get on the internet, when you visit, what are your top news sites? Like what is that process and what drives it? I'm curious.
I'm forever fascinated by connecting dots where others haven't yet. So, and the only way to do that is to consume an enormous amount of information, try to understand it, and see patterns. And look, we're wrong a lot. Like we're the first to admit it. One of the brand attributes that we're unabashedly honest about, which is we'd rather be wrong than boring. So we'd like to be provocative without being polarizing. We put pieces out where we make predictions and they don't come through, but we explain the basis of those predictions and where they come from so that readers can then consume that for themselves and make their own calls. The process is simple. We read the Wall Street Journal, we read the Financial Times, we peruse Twitter, we have lists. When we identify a new and interesting thinker, we add that person to a list and we see what they're putting out. We read financial reports. We basically consume things that are interesting to us and try to connect patterns.
Well, talk to me about that a second. Hold on. I didn't actually know that you did that. So you have these lists that you compile?
Of course. One of the foolish ways to use Twitter is to trust whatever the algorithm puts in front of you is what's interesting to you. If you do that, you're just going to end up angry. So when we peruse Twitter, we use lists. And lists is a great tool of Twitter, which allows you to curate the content flow by topic or personality. And so, we have a macroeconomics list, we have a uranium list, we have an energy list, we have a renewable energy list, we have a content creator list.
I've always seen people adding me to my list, but I never actually made a list or follow a list. How does that work? I'm ashamed to say I've never actually done it.
It's quite simple. So this is a really important point. If you're using Twitter without lists, you are ceding to Twitter the ability to tell you what you should be reading. And by only using Twitter with lists, you take back control from the algorithm, the types of things and the types of people you would like to see. Now, that works best if you have a diversified list. So we have a crypto bull list and a crypto skeptic list because we want to see both sides. Now, I know where we come down on that, which is something I'm sure we could discuss later. But, if you only curate for confirmation bias, then it's not much better than the Twitter algo doing it on its own.
Unless you just do the latest tweets. I mean, Twitter used to be get the latest tweets.
Yeah, no, that algorithm, they're designed to keep you paying attention. And the most powerful way to keep people paying attention is to anger them. I assume this was well known that if you spend too much time on social media and you allow the algorithms to dictate what you see, you're going to leave stressed with high anxiety and a touch of anger. This is their definition of success.
That's especially true on Facebook. I mean, I haven't used Facebook in years, but I do remember when I left Facebook, I still have a page on there, but I don't use it. I don't even update the Hidden Forces page. But I remember feeling like there was a huge divide between how I felt when I would peruse Facebook and how I felt when I would peruse Twitter. I mean, Facebook was I just always thought it was pure garbage. Can you share your Twitter list the way that, let's say, you could share your Spotify list?
I keep all of our lists private, but yes, you can make them public.
Okay, got it.
One of the reasons why you probably want to keep them private is, your friends see that, hey, I'm not on your list. What's the matter? You don't like my account. And so it's sort of a social part of the social media as well. But no, there's some really fascinating. So for example, Dimitri, there are hundreds of accounts on Twitter that produce really great content that don't have a large audience for whatever reason. Maybe they don't market themselves well. So we try to keep lists of interesting underfollowed people. And we get many great ideas or dots that we could connect to other ideas that we have. Content creation, there is no original content creation. Everybody is building on, borrowing from, combining other people's works. That's literally and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way people think and the way information is developed and stories are told. Yeah. And there's lots and lots of people on Twitter who have fantastic brains, but they can't connect that brain to a wide audience for a variety of reasons. And so we study these people carefully. We study what they say. It informs our opinion. It gives us a basis from which to write. But also, we're just ferocious readers because we don't have meetings. Imagine a life. Now, you're a professional content creator, so you've never worked in a large corporation in the way that we did. To the people listening to this who do work in a large corporation, imagine if your entire life was 0 meetings, but your profession was you want to stay informed and you want to learn and you want to read. It's incredible how much you can get done in a relatively short period of time if you have no distractions.
Absolutely.
I would estimate that 75 to 80% of my time when I worked at large companies was just completely wasted. It was soul-sucking. It was non-productive. It wasn't value add. We had bursts of value add. And so what we've tried to capture as a firm is only working on those bursts. And so if 20 to 25% of your time is productive and you eliminate the other 75, you can 4 to 5x your productivity. But you have to be disciplined about it because even with our existing clients, they will start to schedule meetings and you have to remind them. There's many people in your life that are happy to take meetings with you because they think FaceTime is valuable. We're not among those people. There's no need for us to be on this call, so we're not going to accept it.
Yeah. To your point about people, one of them that came to mind is Michael Pettis. I just checked right now. Michael Pettis only has 61,000 followers. He's like one of the best people to follow on China, certainly on the economic story and the transatlantic economic relationship between China and the United States. A phenomenal brain, only 61,000 followers,
And that's actually pretty good. There are brains of similar caliber that have far fewer followers. I'm pulling one up as we're talking right now, but our mutual friend, your friend, and I admire him from a distance. I've never met him. Simon Mikhailovich only has 28,000 followers, 29,000 followers. And this is a man with unbelievable life experiences and great insights to share. And look, again, 28,000 followers is top, 0.2% on Twitter? I mean, it's not, we don't yet have that number. And so, there's some really, but I'm talking about like phenomenal accounts with 500 followers or 800 followers or 1,500 followers. There's no shortage of those.
Yeah.
And if you can go and find them, then they become this amazing input. So you could crowdsource expertise if you understand how to distill the complexity.
Well, what's going on with the information landscape and media is one of my single biggest obsessions / passions. And for a long time, whether it's from the angle of fantasy, fiction, the narratives we construct, the stories we tell, how we relate with the world, the zeitgeist of the society, or whether it's actually more of the specific, meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the institutional news networks. Because this has been a downward sloping hill since I got into media. Like the mainstream news institutions have been consistently losing credibility. But ever since the election of Trump in 2016, I just feel like it went to a giant collapse. Because it feels like what happened was, and now I'm actually going to say a bunch of things and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on it, but I've talked about this on the show. When I was in college, Fox News was separated itself from the pack insofar as it became the first editorial news organization. It followed this business model to a T, and it worked perfectly for it because you lower costs and you expand your audience because people wanted to hear opinion. And there were all sorts of reasons why that particular brand worked at that particular time. But I think what happened by 2016 was organizations like CNN and MSNBC had already been on this road, basically decided that they couldn't survive by being a straight news organization. And they had to sort of capture an audience and reconfirm their biases. So I feel like that is one thing that has become a much more structured, concrete part of the landscape, which is that people go to sources that reconfirm their biases, whether it is through intermediated platforms like Twitter, Facebook, which do it through the algorithm, or whether it's going directly to the host of a news program or to someone who writes something. One, let me just ask you about that. Like, how responsible is that phenomenon for the decay in the quality of news that we have today? The fact that the principles of journalism and the idea of trying to find out objective truth and confirming multiple sources, et cetera, that this has fallen into disrepute. How much is that responsible for where we find ourselves today?
I think, we think about this an awful lot, as you can imagine, because it's core to this new enterprise that we're trying to build. What you're really describing is the struggle that the media, in the broadest sense, is having with the changing landscape of technology and the expectations around business and business ownership. And unless you're going to socialize the media, say in the way that, the UK does with the BBC, or Canada does with the CBC.
Or PBS, or the way we do with PBS, which is actually a really great channel, a really great source of information.
And sort of a hybrid model like NPR that also depends on listener support.
Sure.
But the business of the media has been, I think, destroyed in the traditional sense. And so now the question, and does
this go back to the internet, to Craigslist and
private equity ownership of newspapers, expectations of revenue, clickbait, what you're seeing, the oldest names, some of the oldest and previously most respected properties have literally dissolved into clickbait farms because they're optimizing for money, which is fine. I mean, we're capitalists here and we're all for people making money from their content. But what happened is I think the old model broke. The transition was difficult. You have all the pieces on the floor now. And the question you're asking yourself is, how are all these pieces going to be reconstructed? And when the pendulum swings the other way.
Yes, but also why, right? Because it wasn't just, money has always been important. And the sort of capitalist forces are no different today than they were, or not meaningfully in the context of what we're talking about. But there was a different cultural consensus around the role of the news media and the permissibility of losses in the news division that would be supported, capitalized, whatever, by the larger media organization or conglomerate, right? Yeah. So like CBS News was expected to lose money for decades, right? That was the idea, that if it had to lose money, it had to lose money. There was a public good that was being performed. And it seems that that's changed.
It's been disrupted by technology, Dimitri. Cable TV was the first big disruption to the big three news networks.
And that was absolutely in terms of competition. Do you think that is the source, or was there begin to be maybe in the early 80s a changing perspective around the role and importance of money?
Yeah, I would say all of this flows from the technical disruption of media is no different than the technical disruption of many sort of old school empires that were dominant in the culture. You mix that in with sort of social unrest, sort of perhaps a bit of mission void after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union and American culture. There's a lot of fragmentation in American culture, and the advent of Facebook and Twitter came just at the right time to allow people to create their own echo chambers. And then when you're in such an echo chamber, and believe me, we've fallen victim to them, you can begin to view the more traditional news outlets as being untrustworthy. I would say that Donald Trump has many attributes, one of which is he has destroyed, for a large swath of the American populace, destroyed the credibility that remained in some of the old guard media empire, Washington Post, CNN, fake news. And so there's 50% of the country that doesn't believe anything that comes on CNN and is, instead of consuming the information as news, is consuming it as propaganda. And what does that mean for my worldview?
Which it is. It is. It's largely propaganda. That's my view.
On both sides, yes. And Fox News is largely propaganda as well.
100%.
And so this stratification of the ability to curate exactly what it is you want to read, this confirmation bias, has a profound impact on that industry. But I do think that pendulum has probably swung too far. And I think businesses like Substack, which provide a pretty interesting service, is a way for people to, of course, still take advantage of those forces. We could have grown faster if all we did was write bullish pieces about crypto, but our intent is to be true and authentic to ourselves and try to grow as fast as we can. So there are sort of standard growth hacks that intelligent people can follow. But I do think that if you can create value and you can become sort of citizen journalists, that the role of journalism, we're not professional journalists. We do try to adhere to certain standards, like we have to believe what we write, and we have to source things where we always, when we quote a news article, we include the link so people can read the full story and get the context. But we're not professional journalists. And so we will write things with a bit more sort of opinion than that. It's sort of a hybrid between an opinion piece and a news piece. But this is changing. Like, the landscape is continuing to evolve. And this is especially COVID. COVID has changed this radically, Dimitri. The decentralization of entertainment and education is real. There's a wave of people reconsidering their pre-COVID life choices. Why do I commute to work to sit in an office farm when I know personally I could be way more productive doing this from home? Why do my kids go to this school? Like, one of the big challenges I think we're seeing in the education space is, for the first time, parents got a bird's eye view into what actually happens in school when they had to help their children learn remotely. And you're seeing a substantial wave of homeschooling post-lockdown, not driven by vaccine mandates or mask mandates, at least not in total. I think a big part of it, which is underreported, and the sort of education complex would like you to not know this, parents feel that with their own personal time or the ability to invest in their children's education directly, that they could do a better job than the schools were doing. And it only makes perfect sense if there's 30 children in a classroom versus a parent teaching 2 children at home who actually deeply love those 2 children and are fully vested in their future success, that there's no competition. But then that's going to open up a variety of other questions. So I just think this decentralization of entertainment, take YouTube. I love YouTube. I'm a huge consumer of YouTube. I learn a lot on YouTube. I bought a garden tractor and I wanted to learn everything about it. And within 2 days of literally the exact model of tractor that I bought, there are dozens of videos: how to change the oil, how to change the fuel filter. Here's how you put the blades on. Here's how you sharpen your blades. It's all out there. It's all free. It's all distributed. We wrote a piece, America's Colleges and Universities Are Doomed. The value proposition of spending $60,000 a year for 4 years to get a liberal arts degree is almost certainly NPV negative for the median consumer. And that has to end. It's out of reach for most people anyway. And so this is all being massively disrupted. It's one of the unforeseeable, perhaps unintended consequence of the COVID lockdowns and our response to it, is that people are taking control over their information flow, the education of their children and themselves, reinventing themselves. And in the metaverse, if you do it well enough, you can be anybody you want, even a green chicken.
Yeah. So you actually said something very early on, and I wrote it down, and I wanted to bring it up, but I didn't have an opportunity until now, which is, you said that never has there been more access to raw information and raw data than there is today. The problem isn't, I completely agree. The problem, though, is in the synthesis, both in the verification and in the synthesis. The people have a very difficult time coming to consensus on what is and what is not true, and what is and is not so to speak, and then how to put that together in a way that helps them understand the world. And it seems to me that that's where the real opportunity is in media today, right? That's where existing institutions are failing us. And that's where I think also individual storytellers, hosts, writers, while valuable contributors, are not sufficient, right? I think we need, my view, and I'm curious to hear yours, that this is where the opportunity is and that we need a new approach to synthesizing information and helping people make sense of the world today, because people seem more than ever just scattered. In the same way that you talk about decentralization of entertainment, there's also decentralization of reality. And I don't know how viable that is for a cohesive community.
This is precisely the inefficiency in the market that, in our own small way, Doomberg is trying to address. Our natural skill is to synthesize and to explain. We have 3 brand attributes for each Doomberg piece. One is that we should be funny without being silly. 2 is that we should be provocative without being polarizing. But 3, and perhaps most importantly, we should teach without being self-indulgent. So we don't preach, but we teach. If you don't learn at least one thing every time you get an email from Doomberg, then we have failed in our brand ambition. And this lack of synthesis of desperate information, connecting the dots with a proper introduction, old school way of explaining, you could sort of view each Doomberg piece as a sort of a school lesson in the things that we're about to write. And sometimes we learn with the audience, like we have the first to admit, we're trying to learn about stablecoins or decentralized finance or pick your favorite NFTs and the evolution of cryptos. We're certainly not the old man shaking his fist on the lawn saying, this is new and different, I don't understand it, therefore it must be wrong. We're not so arrogant to believe and behave in that way. We're skeptical for sure, but there's something going on in the NFT space and we need to understand it. There's something going on with crypto, and this is a market signal that we'd at least like to understand and explain to our readers who may have a similarly skeptical bend. But the exact inefficiency you described, which is an overwhelming amount of data and a sort of lack of ability to synthesize that data, we hope to occupy that at least in the areas that we understand and that we're passionate about, that we have direct experience in as well, which is sort of traditional heavy industry, commodities, energy, environmental, renewable, in that space.
Besides you, me, Grant Williams, other people who we're friends with, right? Besides us, is there anyone out there who you've discovered, podcaster, someone with a Substack, et cetera, who got you really excited? I mean, once you discovered him or her, you had that feeling. I mean, this used to happen to me when I was younger. When I would start reading books for the first time, like, serious books, history books, et cetera, and I would just fall in love with having access to all this information. And when someone was able to, like what you guys try and do, kind of connect the dots, so to speak, people come to us for that, which always feels very weird. But do you ever come across someone else who does that in a way that really inspires you?
Oh, sure. I have several friends in the content creator space that I admire their work and I've learned a lot from. I mean, Kevin Muir, the macro tourist, writes a really fascinating Substack and I don't trade professionally. We don't trade professionally as a firm, but we're endlessly fascinated with people who do and how they think about markets. Kevin Muir is fantastic. Our mutual friend, Tony Greer, who comes from the world of hardcore commodities trading, at Goldman Sachs and the Gold Desk. And he and I and the rest of the Doomberg team have become good friends with him. And he's fascinating. I love Edwin Dorsey, who runs the Bear Cave Substack. He's a very young, energetic, he's in his early 20s, really hard worker. Part of the reason we started the Doomberg Substack was, we were inspired by the success that he had and helped him out a little bit offline and got to know him very well. We just met him personally for the first time a few weeks ago. He's a fantastic young, hardworking kid, the kind of, my son is in his late teenage years. And if he turned out, if he grew up to have the engine that Edwin Dorsey has, I'd be very proud of that. So there's all kinds of people, but also, to sort of flip it back to what we discussed earlier, far more interesting to us is the sheer number of accounts that don't have large followings that do this on Twitter. You'll see an incredible thread on Twitter that gets 10 likes or 15 likes, but you learn something profoundly from it. And so what we try to do is we try hard to retweet those and lend support to those to the extent that we've developed an audience and people are going to read the things that we retweet. Back to our philosophy of giving, we try to find interesting thinkers on Twitter and retweet their stuff. And in fact, the lack of sort of big centralized nodes for explaining these things is part of the I think is just a part of the descriptor of where we're going. And so that's back to the whole point about Twitter lists and keeping 15 or 20 people in one topic area that you know. I'll give you a perfect example. New online friend, never met the man, Josh Young at Bison Research, has done some really great work specializing in forecasting whether OPEC or OPEC Plus truly has the spare capacity they claim they have in order to meet any incremental demand for oil as the economy reopens. Here's a guy that's been writing about this for months, and the media just now is coming around to his thesis and occasionally quoting him, but he's not gotten near the exposure that the quality of his work, you would think, on a topic so important would dictate. I'm going to look him up now as we're talking, but he's done really great. And that's a really important point. Like, if OPEC doesn't have the spare capacity that we all think and assume they do, then that has profound implications for the markets and energy policy and so on. And, Josh Young is at Josh_Young_1 has 11,000 followers on Twitter. Had a phenomenal run this year with his firm and seems like a very interesting and intelligent guy. And so any chance we get to sort of promote his work as well, because it's unique input, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, totally. And actually, I want to talk to you about energy markets, because you've written a lot about that. There was something that I also think that values are important. Not everyone shares our values. A lot of people don't share our values. That's why you and I are friends. That's why I'm friends with Grant Williams. That's why you're friends with Grant. And earlier on in my career, I tried to develop relationships with people who I thought were super competent, capable, from whom I could source opportunities, but who I wasn't so much into their value system, perhaps. But I thought I could work around that, or I could deal with that. I've learned that that doesn't work for me. If I'm not fully on board with someone's values, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person or I have to distance myself from them. But I can't develop the kind of intimate relationship with them that I would need to have, certainly to be a friend. But I think also when it comes to taking information from that person, certainly I will take information from all sorts of people if I think it's valuable. But for the type of really powerful relationship that some of us have with our listeners or with our readers, I think people need to really vibe with you. You know what I mean? They need to feel like you guys come from the same cloth.
I have I agree. Let me give you a yes and, which is sort of classic corporate public relations training. Never say but, say yes and. I believe that really what it comes down to is there's sort of two types of people in the world. And maybe this will resonate with you. There's givers and there's takers. So let's take Grant Williams. Couldn't be a nicer guy in the world of FinTwit, financial media, content creation. Grant Williams is constantly promoting other people's work, views nobody as a competitor, views sort of value as something to be co-created and shared. He's been extraordinarily helpful to Doomberg as we launched this, very supportive. He's very supportive of you. And if he has something bad to say about somebody, generally he keeps it to himself. He doesn't say it. And, he is a giver. And there's just some people, no matter how talented, no matter how prolific, no matter how interesting, they just sort of fall into that taker category. So their first calculation is, what's in it for me? And I think both of us and the people you've mentioned try to sort of be givers. We're certainly givers. We support as many people as we can. We always try to give credit. We retweet other people's work. We had there's a longtime listener asked me to be on his show, and sure, of course, I'm happy to go on your show. And Grant and you and others, Tony, Edwin. I talked to Edwin Dorsey a fair bit. We're constantly sharing notes on this amazing evolution in content creation and what works and what doesn't work. And so if you're viewing the size of somebody else's pie as your measurement, then you're probably a taker. And whereas if you're a giver, nothing would thrill me more than to see you be as successful as you can be, or for Grant to keep growing at his pace, and for Tony to double or triple or 10x his business. They're my friends and I want them to succeed. I want to share the value they're creating with them and not view that as some kind of a statement or some negative measure against how well Doomberg is doing or how well our consulting business is doing. But here's the test. If my friend won the lottery, I'd be happy for them. I wouldn't be jealous that I didn't win the lottery.
Yeah, I wasn't always that way. I've changed a lot as I've gotten older, and I've unburdened myself of some of my insecurities and the chips I carry. But, I've said it before, Grant's awesome, man. Grant's someone that I look up to, morally speaking. He sets a really great example for all of us. So we're going to move the rest of our conversation into the overtime my friend. For anyone who is new to the program, Hidden Forces is listener supported. We don't accept advertisers or commercial sponsors. The entire show is funded from top to bottom by listeners like you. If you want access to the second half of today's conversation with Doomberg, as well as the transcripts and rundowns to this episode and every other episode we've ever done, head over to hiddenforces.io and check out our episode library, or subscribe directly through our Patreon page at patreon.com/hiddenforces. There's also a link in the summary page to this episode with instructions on how to connect the Overtime feed to your phone so that you can listen to these extra discussions just like you listen to the regular podcast. Doomberg, stick around. We're going to move the second half of our conversation into the subscriber overtime.
You bet.
For more information about this week's episode, or if you want easy access to related programming, visit our website at hiddenforces.io and subscribe to our free email list. If you want access to overtime segments, episode transcripts, and show rundowns full of links and detailed information related to each and every episode, check out our premium subscription available through the Hidden Forces website or through our Patreon page at patreon.com/hiddenforces. Today's episode was produced by me and edited by Stylianos Nicolaou. For more episodes, you can check out our website at hiddenforces.io. Join the conversation at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hidden Forces Pod, or send me an email at dk@hiddenforces.io. As always, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.